Good morning, everyone. Some stories are so sacred, they feel like holy ground. In this deeply moving episode of Bound by Grace, we sit with husband and wife, Diane and Brian Barker, who have walked through unimaginable loss and emerged with a faith that still stands. After losing their beloved daughter, Athena Rose, to cancer, Diane and Brian chose not to be defined by grief, but to be refined by it. Out of their pain, they birthed a nonprofit, Athena Rose, resilient and strong, to honor her legacy and support others walking through the fire of suffering. In this conversation, they share the raw and real journey of parenting through illness and loss, how Jesus met them in the darkest moments of their grief, the birth of a mission to bring hope and strength to others, what it means to walk through fire and not be consumed. This episode is tender, powerful, and sacred. If you've ever questioned God in the midst of a heartbreak or wondered how to keep breathing when the unthinkable happens, Diane and Brian's story will remind you Jesus doesn't always take us around the fire. Let me say that again. Jesus doesn't always take us just around the fire, but he always walks with us through it. How are you guys doing today?
Hi, we're doing okay.
I'm excited to have you guys on. This is a very sensitive topic for me in particular, even though the weight is very different to have a child and see them grow and then have the loss. Um, just so our viewers know, I experienced a loss of my daughter at 35 weeks of pregnancy. So I had a stillborn, and that was very traumatic. So I can only imagine what you guys have gone through. So I really want to get into this story and be very sensitive on it. So I have shared the questions that I will be asking with Diane and Brian because I wanted to ensure that I wasn't overstepping or missing something that needed to be said. So we are going to do a Q&A. However, I want to put this out there. If the Spirit moves us to do probing questions on a certain subject or to really get into a certain question and it goes a little longer than what we think, I want us to just flow naturally, as natural as possible. And I want you to really listen to your hearts on this one. Um, I know that you know the questions, but if you all of a sudden get this feeling like, I kind of need to say this, please do, because God knows there's a listener out there that this will help. Okay. All right. So we'll start with our first one. Can you take us back to when you first knew something was wrong? What were those early days of diagnosis like for you as a mother and father? I know things moved quickly. You did let me know that. But what was the red flag?
So, our Athena Rose during that time, she was 2 years old and she was a very active child. She just wants to run around like from one place of the house to the other. 1 week towards her diagnosis, it was literally just 1 week. She started vomiting more. She would fall
Mm,
like in the middle of like the room, like she would run and then fall and then try to get up and then fall again. And until that one night, it was a Saturday, I believe. Actually, let me take that back. It was November 22nd when we watched the Frozen 2 and
mhm.
we went to the movies. I was holding one of her hand and he's holding one of her hand, and we were just walking and suddenly she would fall. Like even though we were holding her, to the point that something is wrong. But she was able to go through watching the movie. But then the next day, um, he texted me. I was at work, and he said that she's just vomiting nonstop. And I said, take her to the hospital. During this time, we were in North Carolina, and I told him that, yeah, just take her to the hospital. So him and my mom took her to Womack at
Mhm.
Bragg, and maybe I'll let him tell the rest after that.
Mm. Yeah, she threw up her breakfast and even threw up her lunch. She barely kept any fluids down. And we kept on thinking maybe it was a flu or something like that. But when we got to the hospital, told her what her symptoms were. Um, I'd actually dropped my mother-in-law and her off at the entrance and told her to go in and get her checked in, and I'll park the truck. So I parked my vehicle. As soon as I got in, they were pulling me, my mother-in-law, and my daughter into the back immediately. They wanted to get her a CT scan. Um, while trying to get the CT scan, there was like a 250-pound dude trying to, like, linebacker kind of guy, trying to get my 2-year-old little girl to stay still.
Mhm.
She was overpowering him because she was afraid of the machine,
Mm.
which goes to show how strong kids are when they're afraid.
Yeah.
But we finally got her to calm down. Um, got the CT scan, went into the waiting room, and then they came back and said, "Hey, we're calling between UNC, Duke, St. Jude's Hospital, and 2 other ones I don't remember, seeing who wants to take your case." So I'm like, "What do you mean our case?" Then they flipped the screen around and showed me was it a 5.3
5.3 cm.
centimeter mass inside of her brain. And it didn't click about what was going on until after
Mhm.
I texted her or tried getting a hold of her, got a hold of my chain of command, and then it didn't fully hit me until I talked to my brother. I was like, "Hey, she has a mass in her brain. She has cancer," and then I immediately broke right there. Um, that same night, they got her up to UNC up in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and it was only a couple of days before Thanksgiving. Her surgery was the night before and the day of Thanksgiving. They took out most of the mass the night prior, and then they had to go back in less than 12 hours later to remove the remaining portion that was attached pretty close to her brainstem.
Yeah.
Mm. I'm familiar with UNC. My son was born at 27 weeks and had a blockage just because he didn't develop by then. I mean, they're not fully developed. He had a blockage between his stomach and his small intestines, so the food never moved.
Right.
Um, and so he wasn't big enough for them to do surgery, so they sent him to UNC. And I was in Fayetteville, and I know that drive.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's a good hospital. Um, okay, so let's have you recount the struggle that your family went through with all of the hospital visits.
Wow. As he mentioned earlier, when we got to UNC, um, like the Monday off that week, because that was a Saturday, we stayed in UNC until that Monday. They did an MRI to verify what was happening, and they gave us like this whole view of the actual mass. And they said that it was a very big mass, even for a child, even for an adult. Uh,
Mhm.
and they were saying that the soonest that they can do was November 27, which is the Wednesday. November 28 was Thanksgiving. And just imagine you're like looking forward to celebrating Thanksgiving with your family, but then here there were we were there waiting for our daughter on the Wednesday night, and she spent like 10 hours on the operating table, and we were just like,
Mm.
I don't know, drinking Starbucks coffee, but just trying to stay awake. But then the emotions are just like filling us all up. just for them to tell us, hey, we still have 1 cm left. We were not able to remove everything, but we sent the biopsy that night on the 27th. And then the next day, she went back in and did another surgery. And during that time, they were able to completely remove it. They were saying that they had to keep that 1 cm because it was so close to the brainstem that she made that die instantly on the table, because the brainstem is connected to how you're breathing and how you're walking and all that. So they were meticulously like trying to remove that. Just that process alone of surgery was very traumatizing to us as parents, and it was it was a lot. And then November 29, which is a Friday, um what happened? November 29, they extubated her, but then before she got extubated, she went into respiratory arrest. uh, I'm a nurse by profession, and
Mhm.
I have seen people code on the table. I have personally pounds on person doing CPR, but seeing your daughter like with multiple people in there, and they didn't want us to be inside the room, we were just outside. I can't even read the numbers on the monitor. I was like, what is it? I have to ask him, like,
Hmm.
enumerate those things, because that numbers I can still process in my head, but the process of them trying to pounce on her and trying to intubate her again, which is like very traumatizing to see as a parent. And that was just November 29, and they had to re-intubate her, and she did arrest twice on November 29. And that was like that was just like the week, or like 3 days alone in a week when she was in the hospital. And they had the chaplain come in and say, hey, I know this is very hard on you, do you guys want to talk? Both of us said no. We want
Hmm.
right there, we want to see what's happening, that's our daughter. And we just wanted people to stop like trying to swarm us to say, hey, let's get you this way, let's get you to a different place than
Yeah, at one
this.
point I actually started telling people, "Do you like your teeth?"
Yeah. Hmm. I
Yeah.
could definitely resonate with that. Um, I don't know if this is one of the questions, but I feel like this is a question needing to be asked right now. What was your, did you even think about God during this moment?
I was praying the whole time. I was like, please, God, no, not my daughter, not
Yeah.
our daughter. Just please, I'll do anything. And then when she was originally diagnosed, and they told us it was a grade 4 medulloblastoma. I've never heard of medulloblastoma at all. I've never dealt with cancer, even when I was in nursing school. Like I can only hear it back then with in school. But to tell us that, hey, this is a very it's a malignant tumor. I was like, why? Out of all the children, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
during that time, that was my reaction. That was my question to God, is like, why? Why our daughter? Why did you have to give her? That was my question. Is like, why did you have to give her the biggest tumor out
Or
of,
any tumor.
or
Like,
any
why?
like, why?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it
Yeah,
was more of a question, more of questioning why,
more questioning why.
Hmm.
and for
Then questioning him,
Hmm.
his
yeah.
existence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So instead of yelling or cursing at God, we were more of asking the question why.
Yeah. But yeah, those are like the initial, like the whole part of it is just crazy, because after that thing, she was extubated on December 4th. That was like 5 days after that happened when she arrested. That was on December 4th, which was my mom's birthday. And I remember her posting, thank God for the gift of life. And it was just not because it was her birthday, but because our daughter was extubated and she's breathing on her own. And then just for the whole December, she spent her third birthday in the hospital, like December 8th. And then she started chemotherapy December 20th. Sorry, I'm just like blurting all this dates because it was just like very memorable in a bad way. Well, not in a good
No,
way,
I understand. Yeah.
traumatic
Yeah.
in that way. But yeah, December 20, she started chemotherapy. And then, like, right before New Year's Eve, she arrested again. But it was more respiratory, that she was in the oncology floor. And then, right before New Year's, she went back to the ICU and had to do
High flow
nasal cannula, more close monitoring. They were trying to diurese her because she was just like retaining fluids and all. It
What's
was
diurese?
diurese is to make your body pee, like to
Okay. Okay.
retain fluids.
yeah, so
Mm.
to release all that fluid through urination. And so that's what happened until to the point that we had to do in-center rehab because they were trying to regain her
strength and mobility.
She was working with PT and OT, and then they sent us to a different hospital to do a rehab for her. And she was able to walk again, to the point that we had to go back to UNC because she had to do high dose chemotherapy. We found out that she was allergic to one, that when they initially gave it to her, she turned purple.
She went to
Oh my gosh.
And she was in a shock, and it was a lot to see as a parent. And then they did stem cell transplant for her, and then they the whole continues going through the whole physical therapy, OT, getting that back until they said, hey, we're done with chemotherapy in the hospital. We're going to continue doing outpatient medications or outpatient chemotherapy. You just have to go to the clinic. She's doing great and all of that. Then on May 22nd, she went in for a simple procedure that they said is just to remove one of the the Broviac catheter. I guess that's what they were using for her chemotherapy and all of that. And yeah, May 22nd, she went for a simple procedure, and that was the start of not seeing her again.
Everything going
downhill. May 22nd, they said that there was a complication that caused her flash pulmonary edema. It means her lungs was just full of fluid, full of blood, to the point that instead of going back to the oncology floor so we can go home and do outpatient chemotherapy, she had to go back to the ICU. They put her on BiPAP because they said that would help kind of like release those fluids out of her lungs. This was during the time where COVID was happening, and they even tested her 4 times for COVID, and she was negative. That her doctor, because during that time, I only one parent can stay with her, so he was staying with her, and the doctor called me and they said, hey, you need to come in now because we're doing an emergency ECMO. ECMO is a life support that supports your heart and your lungs. And I'm like, ECMO? That is like the last resort, right? And they said, well, we need this now and we need to do this before it goes south. So we went there. As soon as I walk in, he was outside and they were doing chest compressions on her again. And they had to put her on ECMO. And then those cannulas, where is it? It was like huge, her carotid artery. And it was like huge tubes that was in her. And it was like supporting her through her lungs and her heart. During that time, I was like, what is happening? I thought we were going home. And they said, well, there was just some complications. Her lungs is just full of fluids and all of that. She spent 5 days on the heart and lungs ECMO, 5 days, but then she was never extubated. They said that they had to continue doing the mechanical ventilation for her, and there were a lot of machines that they used on her to even try to stay away from ECMO. But then June 5th, they told, actually, no, sorry, it was a lot. On May 30, she was able to get off the ECMO, but then her regular chemo port was clogged. And so she had to go back to surgery to replace that. And after replacing that, she was just not getting better. That the point on June 5th, they told us, hey, we have to put her back on ECMO because her lungs is just not wanting to function at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But they gave us the ultimatum of only 14 days. And after 14 days, there's nothing else that they can do. Yeah. They even called the, what do you call this? The the ethics committee. They even called the ethics committee on us because we were not wanting to let go. Because who would want to let go of their kid? Who would want to let go of their precious child? And during that time, both of us were just wanting to fight for her because we want her to fight for us as well. But it was a lot, to the point that they were just like telling us to unplug her, and I'm like, no.
And it was
No.
2 days before Father's Day that they said that.
It was 2 days before Father's Day. So we kind of like let her tell us when. So she spent 25 days on the lung ECMO. They did a CT scan again, and it just showed her lungs were fibrotic. Completely. It was scarred. There's no air flowing in her lungs anymore, to the point that they were like, there's nothing else we can do. It's just a matter of time on when. And so we told them that, well, if it's just a matter of when, we would let her tell us when. And that was June 30, 2020 at 12:30 p.m. when she had to go. It was like her heart rate did not even count down for us. It went from 96 to 0 immediately. And that was the time.
What was your reaction when you saw her heart rate drop?
It was weird because I was playing a video when she was born. I was like playing it and was just like, I know she was intubated, but I was kind of like showing it to her. I was laying down on her bed as well and just hugging her. And as soon as that video was done, I just look up and it looked 96 to 0. And it was hard because it was the time that I was like, okay, then that was her saying goodbye. And I was just wailing, like people from the ICU or the PICU hear me from, I mean, they had the door closed. I was just yelling and screaming, and I'm like, just please wake up, please wake up. He was in the room.
22 rooms.
24 rooms.
24 rooms.
He was in the room as well, and together with the chaplain that he was working with.
Yeah, Chaplain Chevelle. I was talking to him, and
he just started hearing me yelling and screaming and crying.
Yeah.
But yeah, during that time.
Well, thank you guys for sharing that. I'm so sorry. How did your daughter's spirit shine through even in the midst of her illness? I like this one. Let's go a little happy.
You were with her more like during PTOT.
She, even before everything happened, was a very, I guess you'd say, energetic, but also very, she loved to laugh and she liked to play games and she loved to joke around, I guess you'd say. Um, so she would make every single therapist that walked in that room earn their wages for that day. Um,
I love hearing that.
yeah. So speech therapy, it was difficult at first, but eventually, she learned to love all the people that came through, especially speech therapy, because she also got to have like ice cream and
Yep.
popsicles and stuff like that. So it was always a treat. Um, but yeah, she would play games with them and she would actually have fun with it. They had like games where she had to throw a ball or throw a basketball to try to get it in the hoop. She loved doing that. Um, one of the nurses, Veronica, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I always end up calling her Victoria for whatever reason. She gave her a little blue fish, and we still have that fish to this day. Um, Athena saw that fish and she loved it, but she used it like
Ball.
a baseball or a football. Every single nurse that would come into the room, um, she would actually throw it for them to catch. That was her thing. And then whenever I had to change her diaper, she was playing with this thing. And I was like, hey, I need to change your diaper. You stink. And she's like, no, change the diaper. And I'm like, no, you stink. And she's like,
Yeah.
no, change the diaper.
Oh,
Because she was like getting her speech back.
yeah.
But and her speech was kind of broken, but it was just comical. And every person that came through to and got to know her just loved her. And everyone, like even the nurses were like saying, hey, do I have Athena tonight? Do I have Athena tonight?
Oh, I love that.
There was one room that she stayed. It was room 21, I believe. It was room 21. It was right by the nurse's station, and she has the glass doors. All day she would have the curtain open, and she would just like be waving at everybody. They call her Spunky. She's a very spunky patient or very spunky kid, and it was just like so fun, just like watching her get her strength back during that time. She even know how to say her medications. She has like a little peg tube and or a G tube, and the nurses would have to give it to her so she can push it. And before she pushed it, she would say the word or she would say the medications. And I'm like, you're better than me with saying medication.
Yeah, like when nurses come in, they have to verify or with another nurse, hey, this is the medication. And so
Yep.
one nurse would say the name of the medication, the other one would say the name of the medication, and they would say, hey, Athena, say this. And she would say the name of the medication. And at first, they had to actually tell her to go slow because she was just wanting to shoot the medication in. But yeah, it took a little bit of time to get her to slowly push the medication in.
Yeah.
But it was always fun.
She also has a little walker for like kids. She would be walking around the whole area, like the whole unit. And then she would be like kicking the balls like that they would give her. And she would just like walk with her walker and kick the ball. It was just so
Oh,
cute.
And then we
I
had
love that.
a little car that you can sit the kids in so they can pretend like they're driving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually have a video of her. It's like the song that we were playing in the background for it is the
Baby Shark.
Baby Shark, but it's the metal version. And she loves that version, or she loved that version. And my wife was pushing her towards me, and I was like, this is going to be a great video. And it's just her coming towards you with the Baby Shark metal version in the background.
Did you guys put that? I know we discussed you have a YouTube channel. Did you guys happen to put that video on your YouTube?
So in YouTube, I do have 5 or 6 different videos that I created for her. There is one that is called, the very first one is This is Resilient. It was a 20-minute video of her journey from when she was diagnosed to the time that she passed. And that video was in that video.
In
um,
that particular
not in
Yeah, it's all
particular
it's
video.
compilation, right?
Yes, it's a compilation of everything, but I can definitely share that.
I think we should link it in the description because I have a feeling that after hearing her spunk, people would really like to see that video.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Was there a moment during her journey that still lingers in your heart, one that captured her strength, joy, or personality? A particular one?
Hmm.
For me, it was Valentine's Day. She was reading a book with one of the, I guess you'd say, teachers,
Mm-hmm.
because they still wanted her to like be able to like read or to like work on like reading books to her, spending time learning things and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had actually taken a break while they do that because they do it for like an hour. So I went down to the gift shop and they actually had this big, well, maybe I don't know, about that big of a pink elephant,
Yeah.
and it was like really fuzzy.
Mm.
And it had this thing like if there was something fuzzy, she like got cute aggression. I don't know if you know what that is.
I do, and I am here for it. Like,
Yeah.
I love it.
So
Yeah.
like she would get she would like be something that's so soft, and she would get cute aggression. So she would just go, eh. But
It
after,
reminds me of the Minions movie where the
Yes.
little girl's like, it's so fluffy. Yeah.
yes, that was her wrapped up in, yeah. We actually have a Harley Davidson hat from back when I got my motorcycle. She was wearing it. I walked in and she was wearing it backwards, like I do. And normally she would take my hat and push it forward because she didn't like me wearing my hat backwards. But I walk in and I'm like, "Hey, Athena, I got something for you. Is your session done?" And the teacher said, "Yeah, it's done." And so I walk over to her and I bring out this giant pink elephant, and she immediately grabs it and gives it to her, just like the girl off of the Minions, and just like goes to town of cute aggression.
Yeah. The picture that I sent you, the one with the hat, that was her hat. And that's what we do every June 30 is go up to top of Pikes Peak and just say, I love you, Athena. I think for me, the most memorable moment, or like the moment that still lingers in my heart, is May 2nd. It was close to Mother's Day, I believe. May 2nd, I was getting her out of the room with her little walker. And I took a video of her and I said, hello. And she said, hello. And I said, I love you. And she said, I love you. And it was just kind of like repeating. And that still struck me hard because every May 2nd, towards the part, like, yeah, it was close to Mother's Day during that time that I just, yeah, that
You remembered that and
yeah,
her voice.
and that
Yeah.
that voice, and how I say hello, I love you. That's kind of like her voice.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was one of your questions. Is like, where was this? Like her voice. I can't remember, but I read that yesterday, or was it yesterday, of how you can still hear.
Oh,
Uh,
that what would you say to the grieving parent who's afraid they'll forget the sound of their child's laugh?
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was that part because it just like struck and it still lingers and I'm like, I can never forget that. So yeah.
Yeah.
That's a double-edged memory because that was also the last time you heard her voice in person.
Yep. Yep.
Oh,
Yeah.
what a beautiful last moment with her voice, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was her voice during that time was a
Horrors.
little weird because she would pronounce whatever word with the at the end. Like, so if you said, "Hey, do you want to go for a walk?" She would say "waka." So like was at the end of almost every phrase that she would say.
Hmm.
Oh,
except for whenever she wanted
coffee.
coffee, because we had
Oh, so not coffee?
No
no.
coffee.
So we brought a Keurig so that way we could have like tea or whatever in the room without having to go downstairs and spend like 14-15 bucks at Starbucks.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and so when we would make our drink, she was able to drink like a water um, concoction that was mixed with like a thickener so she could actually swallow because she
Oh,
had
okay.
issues.
Yeah.
But she would say copy.
Copy.
It's almost like copy, like a paper copy, but it was her saying
Copy.
coffee, but the P's were pronounced as, or the F were pronounced as P's.
Yeah.
What did grief look like for you in the beginning, and how has it evolved over time? And I'd like you to answer this individually,
You can
because I know grief is very different for each person and how it presents.
Well, actually, I'll say what I'm going to say, and then I'll let you start.
Okay.
I've been trying to tell people this every time they ask us that question. Is I can't answer for my wife because I was not Athena's mother. I was her father.
Mm-hmm. Very different.
And the loss from a mother aspect is way different than it is a father.
Yeah.
And it's not comparable.
Mm-hmm.
I think
I appreciate you recognizing that and stating it, because a lot of fathers, they forget that and they start to feel like, I think she forgot that I'm mourning too, but they don't think that about how that loss was so much more heavy for the mom.
Because
And it's not that we're not thinking about the husband. It's not that we don't know you went through it too. It's that it's so heavy that we don't have enough of ourselves to give back.
yeah, it goes down to the genetic level with a mother.
It does.
Not just the biological part, but the genetic portion.
We are connected to the kids, and it is scientifically proven that after we carry a child, their genes, their molecular level is inside of us. Like, there's a reason why we are so connected.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So yes, back to the question.
I think I did not give myself enough time to grieve when that happened. So she passed on June 30 of 2020. 3 weeks after that, we both went back to work. And it was crazy because we did a memorial service for her. One of our church leaders said, "Hey, we can do a video, but can you shorten it to 10 minutes?" That 20-minute video that I was talking about, they wanted us for just like 10 minutes. And I said, I cannot shrink it that long or that short because the point was not going to be shown in there. So I was like, this is the minimum I can do is 20 minutes. And during that time, I'm like, actually, I started that video even before she passed because I wanted to show how resilient and strong she was. And for them to tell me, "Hey, we can only do this much," I'm like, this day is dedicated for her.
Yeah, that's callous.
Yeah. And for you to tell me that I can only do 10 minutes, that's not 10 minutes of her life. This is only part of her life that I can share to people how she went through that journey. I don't know if I can say that was a journey as well, but um the whole grief portion is that, yeah, I think I buried myself to work. Back then, I was like, "Oh yeah, I want to be a nurse. I want to be a nurse, and I'm gonna work however long I can work as a nurse." Not knowing that doing that to myself, going back to work without having to actually process the grief, actually cost me so much more trauma because I have immersed myself to seeing my patients on BiPAP, on being intubated and sedated, the way how she looked. Yeah, she was a child and my patients were adults, but having to go see those people, I was just like, yeah, I'm kind of like trying to desensitize myself
Mhm.
to the point that, yeah, I don't want to feel those emotions. But in reality, I really need to feel those emotions and process through it. That it took me until 2023, or no, 24, just last year, that I was like, I cannot be a nurse anymore. I have taken care of other people instead of taking care of myself, and having to
Mm.
process that grief and trying to, I don't know, maybe I was holding on to it to the point that it was causing me more harm than good. It has affected our marriage, personally as well, that I was like, I can't anymore. But then recently, like this past June 30, I told him, I was like, the last time I said I love you, Athena, um, I told him, I was like, we don't have to go back to the top of Pikes Peak and here in Colorado for me to yell, I love you, Athena, anymore. And we can try to do other things. But at that time, actually, that night when we got home, we pray every night. And I just said that I am releasing all this hurts and pains. I'm still
Mhm.
grieving, I'm
Yeah.
still mourning, but I am not holding on to that feeling that I have to continue doing that. I still love her. Um,
Mhm.
it's just there's this thing that he said, or like we saw before, like grief is never gonna change. But you it's just think of it as a ball. You
Mhm.
put that grief inside a mason jar, but instead of the ball shrinking or the grief shrinking, your mason jar grows.
So I like to use the analogy of holding a weight,
Mm-hmm.
and that weight never gets any lighter or heavier. You get stronger.
Yep.
Hmm.
You get stronger, and you with that mason jar, you have more room
Mhm.
it. So
Um, if this isn't too invasive, and you can absolutely not answer, and that's okay. How how did it affect your marriage? How did your holding on, your not processing affect your marriage?
okay. Um, a lot of people, I think I've shared with that to you. A lot of people are expecting us to have another child. Um, to the point that I was like, "Do you want to have a child?" And he asked me the same thing, and I said, "I don't want to replace her just because of what society expects us to have, or for us to do." Um, I don't know how has it affected you, but like for me, it was just like I don't want to have another child just to replace her. Um, I mean, as a mother, just like what you mentioned, it was so much more of a bond that I was not wanting to let go.
Not to
Mhm.
mention you're also an only child,
And I'm
so
an only child, so I wanted her to be our only child.
yeah.
So maybe this will make you think about that a little bit differently, because I had a child after losing mine. Um, I didn't think it was replacing. I want you to reword that, because you could never replace that. You could never replace her. There's only one Athena,
Hmm.
and she will always be with you. If you chose and felt led to have another child, that's not a replacement child. That is God blessing you with another chance, a chance to see a child grow and have that bond again. It's not replacing her. So that's my opinion. Take it as you will. But I see where you're coming from. But because children are such a blessing, and Athena was a blessing, there's no replacement.
Yeah,
Um,
but his grief process.
yeah, your grief process.
I dove into anger
Yeah, yeah.
because for men, our most reliant emotion is anger to feel like you're in control of things that you
Mhm.
don't have any control over at all. And it took me a while to understand that because raised in a house to where I was one out of four boys. Father was raised by a Marine, so crying wasn't allowed,
Mhm.
complaining wasn't allowed. You had to be a man, even though you were 5 years old or 7 years
Mhm.
old, or you, I don't know, got your first pimple.
Mhm.
Um, so I dove into anger. I dove into work, and she was working night shift, and I was working day shift. And there would be times where we would either intersect for like maybe 30 minutes or so, or maybe an hour, enough to say, hey, hi, how was your day? Love you, stuff
Bye.
like that. Bye. Um, and I dove into work. And I remember there was a time where a buddy of mine asked me, like, hey, where were you for like the last 7 months? I haven't seen you. And so
Mm.
I told him the whole spiel out at a smoke pit at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I said everything within 10 minutes because I had, at that time, I had gotten so repetitive that I could
It
just,
became numb. Yeah.
yeah, I had actually bought a pack of cigarettes and I smoked about seven within that 10-minute spiel.
Mm. Yeah. So that was a tell.
Yeah, like I was inhaling and then talking.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I for 10 minutes, that was me. But I would go to work and I would get there a half hour before I was even supposed to be there. And I would end up staying at work until maybe an hour or so passed just because I didn't want to go home.
Mhm.
And I would also use that time to also smoke cigarettes and just try to really cope with everything. Um, when we moved to Colorado, it was the same thing. She was still night shift, I was still day shift. There was actually a period where we'd go 3, maybe 4 days without seeing each other, only talking through text message or phone call. Um, but it was essentially I was that person who wanted to help and be there for everybody who had problems. And I became that go-to guy to fix everybody's problems except for myself. It wasn't until this past year we went through a trauma recovery class together for
It was this year.
or this year. Um, Going through that, we started finally reading our Bibles more diligently, and I finally read 1 Thessalonians 4:13, where it says, "Do not mourn for those who pass away or go to sleep in Christ, as if there is no hope."
Mhm.
In other words, don't mourn for those who die as if there's no hope to see them when God comes.
Mhm.
And between 13 to 18, it even goes into saying that they will be called up first, and then we will meet them in the clouds,
Mhm.
and that we are charged with spreading that good news to those who lose their loved ones in Christ.
That's beautiful. And that's a really good scripture to lean on. Did that give you a little bit of peace?
It gave me peace, and it actually gave me a sword to combat the devil whenever he tried to come back at me and trying to drown me back into the whole grief and sadness and anger.
Yeah. So hearing about how you both grieved, if you, and especially after this trauma recovery, and now that you've gotten more in your Bibles, and now that you recognize each other's griefs, if you could go back and not change what you did, but kind of speak to yourself back then after the loss of her, what would you have said to try and get yourself to do something a little different?
I would tell myself never run from him. because when she passed, it was like as if all my belief or my love for God, it was not completely stripped away. It was
Yeah.
still there. I felt like a rebellious child who was trying away from my father. During that time, it was hard because I could not even open my Bible. I could not even pray. It was just bad. But then I think he had so much hold on me, or like he was he was pulling me back, because no matter how far I tried to run, I didn't do any crazy things. Maybe the only thing that I have done when she passed was drink, but
Hmm.
not to the point that I'm belligerent drunk. I would drink one or two, but it was just like there was so much, like the pull that he had from me was so strong that instead of trying to run, I was running back to him.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so that's what I'm going to tell myself is like, never try to run away from him again, because there is so much love and so much, how do you say it, grace that
Hmm.
he's given us through this mourning time, the whole grief process, to the point that instead of, just like what he was saying, instead of mourning the dead without hope, it was more of, we're going to see her again. We have to believe that he's real, and that our daughter is with him, and she's being spunky as ever. And that one day we will see her again. So
So I can't remember where I heard this from, and I still want you to answer this question, Brian, but I can't remember where I heard this from. It was recently. Um, it may have been from Andrea, to be honest. I can't remember. But anyway, this gives me hope. There was a young boy, I think about 3 or 4, that passed away. And I mean passed away like was dead on the table for 30 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, when he came back, because they were able to bring him back. They weren't going to, and then the one person stepped in and said, "Let's try again," and then he was brought back. Um, as he got a little older, he came to his mom and he said, "I met my sister." And she said, "What are you talking about?" And this was when he was 3 and 4 when this happened. And I think he went to them when he was like 5 and 6. And he goes, "I met my sister." And she goes, "What do you mean?" And he said, "When I was in the sky and I was with Jesus, a little girl ran up to me, gave me a hug, and said, 'I'm your sister.'" Apparently, they had lost a child before him and they never told him.
Hmm.
I think that movie, I've
They
watched it in a
actually
movie
they
called
actually
Heaven is for
created
Real.
a movie based off of that.
So
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. I think it was made into a movie, and I may have gotten the details wrong, but that right there was one of those things like, how would he have known? You know what I mean? Like he could have said 3 siblings, you know what, and then you would question it. But he said one in particular came up and it was his sister. And it just so happens they had lost they didn't know it was a girl at the time, but they had lost a baby previously.
Yeah, and I think he even pointed out the one you lost in your tummy or in
Yeah.
your
Yes,
belly.
I think he did. I think he did. Yeah. So there is hope. I truly believe that. And I can't wait to meet my baby Kelsey when we reunite. Um, what about you for the grief portion? What would you have told yourself if you could have?
It's okay to break.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
it.
For your marriage, because I'm hearing a lot of, I especially from you, Brian, where well, from both of you, where you really engulfed yourself in work instead of grieving. But it sounds like you may have missed out on intimacy and grieving together because of you trying to just make it through. Would you have changed on how you would have supported one another in this journey?
I would say that knowing what I know now about the roles and responsibilities and the authority given to husbands in a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
I would have done more for being there for my wife and praying for my wife and being more present in that time. Because God has slowly been showing me that it's not the authority given to the husband in Ephesians isn't just to be an authority figure, but a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You are responsible for your house. You are responsible for your home, because it even goes to say that when a man will leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife and will become one flesh. When that happens, you are no longer at the bottom of that structure. You are now at the second tier of that structure, because it goes God, husband, wife, children.
Yes.
That means now your responsibility is to be a man of God and cover and love your wife and your children as God loves the church, as Jesus loves the church.
You're there to cover your wife and children. That's huge. Yeah.
And I think now, if I could go back, I would have explained that more into detail to myself and showed myself what I was responsible for in that time. And even before, if I could go back before everything happened and still not change anything, I would still show my younger self what my role as a husband would be for my wife and my daughter.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Diane?
The what? Sorry.
Well, what about you? So how would you have changed how you grieved or showed up, or what was the word I used? Supported your husband during that time?
So like I said, I buried myself into work to the point that I became a travel nurse. And instead of being there for him, I was actually leaving home to work. I was going to different states. Since we were here in Colorado, I went to just 50 miles of Colorado, then New Mexico, and then Nebraska, to the point that I was like, am I really healing, or am I running away more?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would have changed the part where, instead of focusing on my career and trying to do this myself, trying to, like I said, instead of doing that, I would not have run away and processed that grief, processed the loss together, um, and supported each other. But yeah.
In a way, we were kind of living separate lives.
That's what it sounds like. I didn't want to assume, and I wasn't sure how much probing I could do, because that's a very sensitive time, and I don't want you to feel judged, because I've been through it. We were very separate. It really rocked us. So I wanted to know how you would have done it differently, because that's the go-to, I think, for most couples when they experience that kind of loss. And that's not the way that I think God would have called us to do. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, because for me, back in 23, I got out of the Army in, what was it, May? Yeah. I started working at a gun club, just working outdoors, trying to keep myself busy. Things just went very south in the military, toxic leadership, and just I needed more rest and healing than what the Army would allow. It took me a while to realize that I was actually becoming a liability while serving.
Yeah.
but I got to the point to where I wasn't chasing after God. I wasn't even. I mean, I was talking to people that were trying to talk to me about going back to church, but I dove into so much grief and I guess you'd say darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I almost I became suicidal and I almost took my life in September of 23. The thing that stopped me from pulling the trigger was the fact that I was home alone. I had
Mm.
a dog and a cat, and I heard laughing, and there was nobody else in the house but me.
Oh,
And I heard a voice just saying, just do it, just do it.
oh my gosh.
And I threw my firearms inside the safe, packed up the dog and the cat, drove 6 hours to Nebraska, didn't even tell my wife what happened. I just said, "Hey, I'm coming to you." And I called my boss and I said, "Hey, I need to take a couple of days and I'm going to be going to my wife." He's like, "Is there anything specific that you need to tell me?" I was like, "No." So I drove 6 hours to my wife, met her coworkers, spent the time with her, talked to my brother, who I talk to all the time. I talked to him for about 6 hours one day because she still had a shift that she had to work. Um, it took me a while to even tell anybody about it. I didn't even tell her about it until what, this year, or was it last year?
You told me like our after my birthday celebration.
Oh yeah, because I actually had her change the combination on the safe
Mm,
for a time
smart.
period, so that way I
Yeah.
wouldn't be tempted. I even had her take the knife that I carried every day and her swords and like, yeah, we're Second Amendment people,
I like it.
but everything was locked up and away from me. And I didn't tell her exactly why. I just told her, hey, these things just need to be changed, or the combination needs to be changed, and everything needs to be locked up. Um, and I think that same year we went to Disney,
That same month.
or that same month we went to Disney. It wasn't until after we got back because I didn't want to ruin her birthday.
Yeah.
But I didn't really dive into the details of it all until recently.
It's crazy because that was 23.
September of 23. Yep.
Yeah, it was just like a lot, like some, like coming into Colorado because of military and the whole change of scenery, because back then going to being in North Carolina, or at least just flying into North Carolina, it feels so heavy that we just don't want to be in that state. But then Colorado changes in a way that has opened up our perspective to the point that it has allowed us, or it kind of like became a space for us to grieve, even though, yeah, we have dealt with multiple things that happened here, and having to go through what he's been through. And 2024, like just barely start of the year, January 8th, I tore my ACL.
Oh my gosh.
That it literally slowed me down, like, um
Hmm.
because I have dulled myself, or like really drowned myself at work instead of processing grief. But I guess I'm not trying to say that that was God's way of slowing me down, but it felt like it was like really slowed me down to the point that, hey, this time you're not going to be at work, but I want you to start reading your Bible again. That's how it felt during that time, that I am focusing or started reading the Bible again. I was getting myself better and physically, and getting my strength back. That it really triggered us to be like, hey, I think we need to go start going back to church. Because back
Hmm.
then we were not even going to church.
Mm-mm.
Um, that when we entered the church that we are attending now, the very first day we saw the people in the booth, that were hosting the reboot, the
It's
trauma recovery
the trauma
program.
recovery course is called Reboot. It's for military and first responders.
And so I was like, well, I guess it is really time for us to be back to church and rebuild our relationship with Jesus and be surrounded with a community that would help us to process our trauma. And it was really helpful to the point that now we have a better relationship together as husband and wife. And we didn't really, it's not that we don't care, but we would set our day to the point that we're reading our Bibles first before we even, talk.
Sit down and eat or have a
Yeah.
cup of coffee or something together.
We have
And
prioritized our relationship with God and first before our marriage.
We were actually told after Athena passed from my brother's mother-in-law, who's also passed from cancer. What was it, a year or 2 years?
2 years
2
after
years
Athena.
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
She said, if this doesn't break your marriage, nothing will. And
it broke mine.
yeah. But she looked at us and said, if this doesn't break your marriage, then nothing will.
Mm-mm.
And it's been an uphill battle this entire time. But since the beginning of this year, when I told her, I was like, hey, I need a Bible, not one that's just sitting on my shelf that people have given me, but I need one that I feel like God is wanting me to read.
Yeah.
So we went going to Barnes and Noble, and I found a Bible called Every Man's Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's specifically directed towards men. Because I have a soldier's Bible, I have a couple of different ones that were given to me over the years. It's just for whatever reason, this one clicked the most.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed to get that one. And then my wife ended up finding her Bible that has all of her wonderfully colorful scriptures inside of it. She posts every day.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting us 2 desks that face each other, and we were reading together face to face for a while, but then we started diving too much into conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It would take us like 3 hours to read our Bible when we had yeah. So we'd ended up, now I read at my desk and she reads where she reads. And then I also printed out a list of 30 things to speak over your life, and we put it on our desks. And it's
I love that.
scripture based. Each page has 10 things to speak over yourself. Like, for example, for one, I am blessed coming and going out. Deuteronomy 28:6, Psalms 121:8, Numbers 27:15-17.
Do you have a link to those by chance?
I can actually email it, and then
I can figure out a way to make it available for people. I think that would be a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went through a men's conference, and I went to one of the sessions called Spiritual Warfare, ran by a buddy of mine named Phil Coons. And he has all 30 of these things on a sheet of paper that he reads off every morning. And so every time I wake up and come over to my desk, I see that on my desk. And we watched a movie called The War Room, and how she surrounded herself with scripture.
Was that good? I haven't seen it yet.
I would actually highly suggest going on to Amazon and typing in The War Room and see or the Kendrick Brothers. There's a DVD set. It has like 6 movies on it. It has Courageous. It has War Room.
I like Courageous. Yeah. Kendrick. I'm sorry.
The Kendrick Brothers.
The Kendrick Brothers. Okay.
But they have a DVD, six DVDs on there. But there's also another one called The Forge on Netflix.
Yeah.
The Forge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we started diving into watching those as well, and it actually started opening up a lot of things that we had not dealt with.
Yeah.
Have
you heard of the Angel Network?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where we watched Chosen.
Oh, good. Okay. I was wondering because I keep seeing it and I was like, they seem to have some really good things on there. Wondering if I should invest in it.
There are
Actually, the
well,
Angel
no. So
Studios.
we looked at Angel
Mhm.
Studios, but Amazon has the chosen on it,
Yeah.
and so we decided just to finish that before we dive into anything else. Uh,
Mhm.
but the journey from the beginning of this year till now, just 6 months,
It's completely different.
there's been a drastic change in who I was as a person and a follower in Christ. And I believe the same thing from my wife. And I remember specifically telling her, I don't remember chasing after God this intently ever in my life.
Good.
And the other thing that changed for us is before we even go to sleep, we would actually pray. Because back then, for we've been married for almost 10 years and we've never prayed together,
Mm.
Well,
even before sleep,
we would pray out loud
for
with
thinking our meal.
no when we had Athena, when we would go to sleep, we would pray out loud, but it was more like I lay me down to sleep. I prayed, yeah. It wasn't intentional praying, I
Mhm.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a huge difference. Um, what led you and your husband to start the nonprofit in her honor? And what does it mean to you to carry her name forward?
So when we were in the hospital, there's a lot of other nonprofits that would come in. This was during holiday, during
Hmm.
Christmas. A lot of people, this was before COVID, a lot of people would knock on our doors, even though it was like in the unit, and they would say, hey, just Merry Christmas. And then it was like from this nonprofit, from this company, from this. And
Mhm.
like I didn't really think about it until then, until she passed. I think it was close to her birthday on December 2020 that I was like, hey, I think we should do the same thing. It was more like paying or giving back and paying it forward.
Hmm.
That was like our main thing, is to help people who are dealing the same with the same thing that we have dealt with, specifically families that are affected by childhood cancer. And it was something that we originally thought that we were going to do for a few um like just a few first year or something. Originally we started with just gift cards because that was after COVID,
Hmm.
and they said we can't actually do money like the actual paper money, so we can do just gift cards. We can't even give food or anything, not even like a toy to the kids, because they said not no because of the whole COVID part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, okay, then gift card it is. Gift card is just for the parents to just have something to eat during that time for her break, coffee break, and all that. Until 2023 or 24, I can't remember. 23, we have, I think it was 2023, we have extended our nonprofit to the Philippines. Usually, back then it was only UNC.
Hmm.
Then we extended to University of Colorado in Denver. Then 23, it was when we started extending it to the Philippines. My cousin has a business in the Philippines, but he runs an EMT service. He has like three different ambulances.
Wow.
Speaking of ambulances,
Yeah.
our nonprofit had started because of him. Um, there is a specific ambulance specifically for Athena, uh,
Oh.
her honor,
Hmm.
but that will be for pediatric transport and critical care patients, but for, yeah, for kids. Um, so yeah, that's how it started and where it's at now. And
And
yeah.
in 2020, we used our own resources to do the gift cards just at UNC. It wasn't until we filed our taxes the next year they were like, "Hey, you still get the tax deductions and everything for your daughter, even though she's no longer here. And I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, even if she was to only live one day last year, you'd still get the tax cut or the tax for it.
Yeah.
And so we both looked at each other and we were like, I'm not using that for anything personal. I'm not even using that, going to use that for bills. And she's like, well, then let's put it into the nonprofit and we'll see how far we can make this stretch, or how far we can make this go. And it was at the end of 2021 that we did
UNC and
UNC and a children's hospital up in Denver. It was 22 that we did
the same
thing,
and then 23
and
was
then 23 was when we branched out to Philippines. Yeah.
Wow. Where can our listeners donate to your nonprofit and see what it's about?
So that that website that I shared with you, it has that portion that says partner. Oh no, not partner with us. I think there was a part in there that you can donate to a PayPal, because we use PayPal to help other families as well in the Philippines or other countries. That's their only way of receiving money.
Because their ways of currency and receiving are not the same as the United States.
Yeah. So there was a portion in our website that says get involved, and 3 ways to help. Either you partner with us, or spread awareness, visiting our page, or make a donation. There is that one link in there that you can do.
In the comments, if you could, I think you have access. Yeah, it says all. Can you post the link to your website, so that way the videos that are streaming have the link? I will post it in descriptions.
Yeah, just post it in the private chat.
Oh. Okay.
And then I'll transfer it to the comments.
Oh.
Okay. Thank you. So for any of our listeners, if you're wanting to donate, if you're on the live stream, it's about to be in the comment section to where to go. If you are listening to a recording or a YouTube video, it will be in the description. So you're able to support Athena's cause. I really appreciate you guys being on. We didn't get to even half the questions that we had written down. But maybe we can collaborate again and go a little further into detail about certain things. It's up to your comfort level, but I think we touched on quite a bit in this episode that I'm really praying will be helpful to other people going through this trial and tribulation in their lives, and maybe give them some hope, which is really what is needed during that time.
Yes.
Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we close out?
I think that will be it for right now.
Okay. So thank you again to our listeners for listening to Bound by Grace podcast. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. If you feel like you're going through this and you need help or guidance, please reach out to us at boundbygracepodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on our Facebook group, Bound by Grace Podcast, or you could go to our website, boundbygracepodcast.com. Thank you guys again and have a wonderful day.